Good morning, folks. It's really early. We look a bit bedraggled. We are, as we don't have the van, we are going out in the car up to find some birds in Lancashire. We set off on the 2-hour trip to Knott End on Sea in North Lancashire, only stopping off for some breakfast. So we've stopped off for a service station breakfast.
Doesn't look too bad.
Which is okay. The weather outside is horrendous. For most of the journey it was dark, but when we arrived the sun had come up. We had come to Knott End on Sea to find a bird that Kayleigh had been looking for a while, one that was a lifer for her, the twite. These birds had been reported there for quite a few days, so we were fairly hopeful. Although the weather was terrible, we looked out on the area where they had been seen, seeing quite a few waders on the shoreline, mostly turnstone. There were no sign of the twite. We looked up and down the front, seeing this pied wagtail trying to dry off under a ledge. Just as we were getting a bit too wet and cold and losing hope, we heard a call we didn't recognise and a little bird flew onto the shore. We soon found it, although it was very camouflage, and it was the bird we were looking for, the twite. This species does breed in the UK, but generally on treeless high moorland, and are very camouflaged, so very difficult to see. In winter they disperse and sometimes end up feeding on beaches. This individual that we saw was soon joined by a second bird, and they followed each other around the shore feeding for quite a while. But soon it got a little bit too cold for us, so we left it behind, seeing this great crested grebe fishing on the way back to the car. But now it was time to warm up and move on. Look at the state of us.
It's like a lion's mane.
It is horrendously wet and windy and horrible out there. But somehow, to our surprise, we found some twite, which is excellent. That's a lifer for Kayleigh. Woo! And we saw 3 of them. We are now soaked. My trousers are, the backs of my trousers are just drenched. So anyway, we're going to head a bit south now to a place called Lunt Meadows, which is still in Lancashire, and look for a Greenwing Teal, which is the American version of our Eurasian teal. Again, goodness knows if we're going to see it because of the weather, but we're going to look anyway. So stay with us. We drove south for about an hour to Lunt Meadows, where a green-winged teal had been reported. We're here at Lunt Meadows in South Lancashire, not far from Liverpool actually, looking for a greenwing teal, which isn't a separate species from the Eurasian teal,
which we found out
yesterday. Is actually kind of a subspecies, but it's got distinct plumage differences. Anyway, more on that later. Let's see if we can find it first. After a short walk, we found ourselves at where the greenwing teal had been reported. There were a couple of other birders there who also had just arrived, so we all looked out onto the piece of water, looking for this American variation of the teal. The most abundant birds here by far were the Canada geese, all of them swimming and splashing about in the water. Amongst these geese there were some ducks also, including this sleeping shoveler, the ever common mallard duck, this pair swimming past me, and on the opposite side a pair of grey-lag geese swimming up against the bank. On the bank there was quite a lot of ducks, most of which were Eurasian teal, like this one. But soon we spotted the greenwing teal. This bird conspicuous in its plumage difference between it and the Eurasian teal. We'll talk about that in a moment. This individual was roosting on the far side with its head under its wing. Back to the differences between this and our European bird. I've paused this video so you can see. The Eurasian teal swimming past has a horizontal white line running along the edge of its wing. The green-winged American version has a vertical white line running down from the shoulder. We watched it for a while, considering if we can call this a lifer, as it is officially the same species as the European teal. We decided not really, we'll call it a lifer-ish. It spent most of the time sleeping, occasionally lifting its head, and once even having a little walk. But now it was time to leave and say goodbye to all the geese, ducks and coot.
Where are we going?
Hey folks, after our successful Greenwing Teal mission, we're going to find something, hopefully, that is very exciting. In Anglesey, which is a couple of hours away, there's an American widgeon, but not just a regular American widgeon, which in itself is a rare bird, but a bird they've nicknamed a storm widgeon. So one in about every 500 American widgeon have a generally white head instead of grey. So this is not only a rare bird, but it's a rare type of rare bird.
And it's cool looking.
And it's really cool looking. And I don't know if we're going to see it because it started raining again.
Yeah.
But hey ho, let's go for it. Next stop was into Wales and 2 hours away to Anglesey. Hey folks, we're at the site for the storm widgeon. There's a high wind and the light's really against us, as you can see behind me. So we're going to go looking. It's not where it was reported, so I'm hoping it might have moved. Let's see if we can find it. When we arrived, it was really windy and very hard to get any footage of anything. But determined and as foolish as we are, we carried on. I walked along the bank and scanned quite a few of the widgeon that were there, but no sign of this very rare American widgeon. Some of these birds were feeding on grass and some in the water, riding the waves like surfers. As the sun was going down, I was almost giving up until I scanned a bank where some birds were roosting. It was looking into the sun a bit, so the light was terrible, but I picked up a bird that was a little unusual. It was difficult to see what it was as it was roosting, but eventually it lifted up its head, and this was the American widgeon that we were after. It was not just any American widgeon, which is rare enough anyway. It was the 1 in 500 storm widgeon. These birds have a primarily white head, but still have the glossy green eye stripe. Although the weather was terrible and the light was against us, so it was really tricky to get any decent views or footage, we were over the moon to see this stunning visitor from America. And an amazing way to end a surprisingly good day. Hey folks, I'm extremely windswept. We found the storm widgeon. The light was terrible. You'll see in the videos, we were against the sun. Took a walk for a while, couldn't find it, went back to the car, just had a little look at some sleeping widgeon that were near the car, and the American storm widgeon was there. So I stuck around with it for a while, hoping it'd stick its head up some more because it was kipping, and it didn't do that much. And but hey, what a day with everything we've gone for, and we're bedraggled and probably need a shower, so we're actually going to go home, which is unusual for these videos. We headed home, figuring out what on earth to do the following day. Morning all, it's early Sunday morning. After an excellent day yesterday, we didn't really know what to do today. So we're going to head up the North Wales coast back towards that storm widgeon we saw yesterday, in the hope that when we get there, it's not going to be quite as windy. We might be able to get some slightly better footage. On the way, we're going to try and get some waxwings, which have come this far west, which is quite exciting, and do a little bit of sea watching from Llandulus before the rain starts. Stick with us. We headed out on the North Wales coast, heading towards the storm widgeon again, as I wanted to get better footage, but we stopped en route at Llandulus Shore, our favourite sea watching spot. It still wasn't quite light, but we were able to pick out a few birds on the sea, like this great crested grebe and this wonderful red-throated diver. These birds seem to be reasonably numerous here, which is excellent. As the light improved, Kayleigh scanned the sea. As I looked along the shore, there was a wonderfully showy rock pipit that was feeding in front of us. This bird came really close and didn't seem at all bothered by us. It only moved around if we got too close, and then came back when it thought it was safe again. Looking out on the sea, there was numerous common scoters, but they were at a serious distance, so looked just like little black spots on the sea. The only birds close to us seemed to be the cormorants, some drying off on the posts and some flying through. At this point we headed off back to Anglesey towards the American Stormwing. Folks, we're back with the Stormwing in Anglesey. It's here. We've had a look at it. I'm struggling a little bit getting decent footage because it's blowing a gale again. Anyway, I'm just going to walk round onto the bridge. Kayleigh's in the car because it's far too windy, and I'm stupid enough to try and get some more footage. Stick with us. We're looking for waxwings after this. The weather was really windy again, just like last time, but we were able to pick out the American widgeon reasonably quickly. It was sat roosting in a similar spot to the previous day. It was a little bit more active this time, and it got up and began to wander around feeding. It soon moved out of sight onto a bank. I then moved past these swimming pintail onto a bridge that overlooked the bank to try and get a slightly better view. Looking over, it took me a moment to find it. There were a lot of other widgeon roosting and feeding on this bank, but soon enough the American widgeon showed. It was super conspicuous with its white and green head. It wandered around for quite a while, feeding on the bank and dabbling in little bits of water. And although the weather not being great with the high winds and the dreary dark skies, I still was able to get a little bit of reasonable footage of this stunning duck. I watched it for quite some time until it moved back to its original position to roost. As it went to roost and I felt a bit too windswept, I took a walk back towards the car, seeing en route this redshank feeding in the shallows. Just out into the water there was this little grebe fishing, and as I got back to the car I looked out and saw this lovely pintail preening. I am fully windswept. We found the Stormwing again, which was amazing. It's still blowing a gale. I presume it's just windy here all the time.
Twitching out the car.
Yeah, Kayleigh's been twitching out the car. I've been stupid enough to wander around, but I got some, I think, slightly better footage. I'll find out when I get home of this stupidly rare bird. We're going to head back along the coast to see if we can find some purple sandpiper. And then later on, hopefully some more waxwings. We've seen a few this season, but it'd be nice to get slightly better views. So stay with us. We stopped en route to where the waxwings had been seen to see if we could find some purple sandpipers at Ross-on-Sea. When we got there, the weather had perked up somewhat, and we walked along the shoreline, seeing some birds like this robin on the way. As we walked further down, we noticed the tide was out, and there were not many waders that were close in. I did spot this one oyster catcher fishing reasonably close in, but had to scan further out onto the rocks by the water to see any other waders. Soon enough, Kayleigh picked out some movement on some rocks a little bit in the distance. So we scanned these and saw there were quite a lot of birds on them, including this curlew that was walking along the water's edge. Further down there was a lot of turnstones, dunlins and ringed plovers. But as lovely as these are, we weren't looking for them. We were looking for the slightly rarer purple sandpiper. We are at Ross-on-Sea. We've come to try and find purple sandpipers. We think we got one, or I think I've got footage of one. We definitely saw one.
Sure, spotted it.
Yeah, there's a lot of waders here, but they're at quite a distance because the tide is going out. So I've got some footage of all sorts of turnstones and dunlin and oyster catchers and such. So we're going to head now on a bit of a waxwing hunt, because we haven't reliably had really good footage of any this season. So let's go.
And it's stopped raining.
And it's stopped raining, thankfully, and it's not blown an absolute gale. So let's go. After another amazingly successful morning and into the afternoon, we left Ross-on-Sea and headed just north of Llandulus, where some waxwings had been sighted over the last few days. They were frequenting a berry tree that was near a school, but when we arrived they weren't there. We got out of the car and walked up to where there were some other birders. En route, seeing some birds in the bushes eating berries, like this male blackbird, and also this very hungry, by the looks of it, female blackbird that was chomping berries. When we arrived at the spot where all the other birders were standing, they pointed out in some bushes in front of us, across in a field, some waxwings that were flying between two bushes. These birds were making their conspicuous tinkly sound and busy greedily eating berries. This species is one of my favourite. They are so charismatic and full of character. They visit the UK in the winter, and more come if the food supplies run out in Scandinavia or Russia. Occasionally they come in large numbers, and these eruptions are called Waxwing winters by birders, and this year is truly one of those, with these birds coming as far west as this in North Wales, and some even making it to Ireland. We watched these birds feeding and flying back and to for quite a while. I could have stayed and watched them for much longer, but we did have to move on. We had one last stop before going home. Hey folks, we saw lots of waxwings, like lots. It took us a while to find them. Some other birders kind of pointed us vaguely in the right direction, so I'm hoping I've got some really good footage of them, which is great, and the weather's perked up a little as well. It's been horrendous this morning, but we're back at Llandullas. Sure, we thought we'd end the day as we started it, doing a little bit of sea watching before it goes dark, and then back home. So I'll post after this what we saw, what we're going to see. Hopefully something. Upon opening the car door, I was greeted by my friend the rock pipit, who stuck around for a bit. We did look out to sea as the sun was going down, seeing some cormorants that were roosting on the posts, and then out to sea, even further away this time, was the massive amounts of common scoters. Unfortunately there wasn't much else on the sea, so as the sun was getting ever lower, we decided to call it a day and say goodbye to my firm friend the rock pipit. Hopefully we'll see him next time. Thank you very much for watching.
Please like.
Please subscribe. And again. And again in English.
You do it first.
Please like.
Please subscribe.
And please press the notification bell. We're not drunk. See you next time.